The 7 spiritual riddles that stump modern science. For centuries, science has been our map, lighting up the dark corners of the universe and decoding the very building blocks of reality. We've split the atom, we've mapped the human genome, and we've even peeked back at the dawn of time. Our grasp of the physical world has never been stronger. But what happens when the tools of logic and reason just stop working? What happens when our most brilliant minds run into questions that our physical laws can't seem to touch? These aren't just little gaps in our knowledge that we'll fill in later. They're fundamental enigmas about the nature of existence, consciousness, and reality itself. Science has illuminated much of the physical world, but there are questions that remain unanswered. In these gaps, the Bible holds the answers, telling us in Deuteronomy 29:29, "The secret things belong to the Lord our God, but those things revealed belong to us." Are you ready to learn these mysteries? Let's explore them below. Section 1. The hard problem of consciousness. First up is maybe the most personal mystery of all: consciousness. Now, science is fantastic at solving what philosophers call the easy problems. Things like how your brain processes information, pulls up a memory, or reacts when you touch a hot stove. But there's a much deeper, trickier question known as the hard problem. Why do we experience anything at all? Why do you see the color red the way you do? Why can a song make you cry? Why is there something it is like to be you? From a purely physical standpoint, we're just a bunch of neurons firing off signals in the brain. Science can map every single one of those signals, but it can't tell us how that electrical fizz and pop creates the rich, internal world of feeling, thought, and self-awareness. There's a huge gap between the physical brain and the subjective experience. Some thinkers, like philosopher David Chalmers, have suggested that maybe consciousness isn't produced by the brain but is a fundamental property of the universe, just like space or time. This idea, called panpsychism, hints that some basic form of consciousness could be in all matter. It's a concept that starts to blur the line between physics and ancient spiritual ideas of a universal awareness. For now, the world inside your head remains the most profound, unexplainable miracle science has ever faced. Science can explain how the brain works, but not why we are conscious, nor where thoughts, emotions, and personal experience come from. In this sense, the Bible teaches that we are not just matter, but spirit and soul, given by God, Genesis 2:7. Then the Lord God formed man of dust from the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living being. Also, conscience as an internal witness given by God. Showing the work of the law written in their hearts, their conscience also bearing witness, and their thoughts either accusing or excusing them. Romans 2:15. Here it is highlighted that God placed in each person a moral conscience that goes beyond physical processes, guiding between good and evil. Let's move on to mystery number 2. Section 2. The origin of life. From the mystery of our inner world, we move to the mystery of where we came from. How did life get started? This is the riddle of abiogenesis, the process of life springing from non-living stuff. For decades, scientists have talked about a primordial soup on early Earth, a chemical cocktail zapped by lightning or heated by volcanoes, which cooked up the first simple organic molecules. The famous Miller-Urey experiment in 1952 even showed you could make amino acids, the building blocks of proteins, this way. But going from a few amino acids to a self-replicating, living cell is an absolutely massive leap. The complexity inside even the simplest bacterium is staggering. How did all these non-living parts assemble themselves in the perfect order to create DNA, proteins, and a cell wall, all working together? Scientists have proposed ideas like the RNA world hypothesis, which suggests RNA came before DNA as the master molecule of life. However, recent studies have poked holes in some of these classic models, showing that the conditions on early Earth might not have produced the right ingredients after all. The sheer unlikeliness of all the right parts coming together by pure chance has led some to wonder if there's another principle at work. We know abiogenesis must have happened. At one point there was no life, and then there was. But how it happened remains one of the deepest secrets of existence, leaving a little room for spiritual interpretations of a creative spark in the universe. The question remains, how did life arise from the lifeless? Science has proposed theories, but none fully explain the leap from inert matter to a living being. But the Bible answers clearly. For in him all things were created through him and for him. Colossians 1:16. And I am the Lord, the maker of all things, the one who stretches out the heavens, the one who spreads out the earth by myself. Isaiah 44:24. Let's move on to mystery number 3. Section 3. The fine-tuning of the universe. Our third riddle zooms out from the origin of life to the origin of, well, everything. As physicists have looked deeper into the cosmos, they've found something stunning. The universe seems to be perfectly calibrated for life. There's a list of fundamental constants like the strength of gravity, the charge of an electron, and the expansion rate of the universe, and if you tweaked any of them by just a tiny fraction, none of us would be here. For example, if gravity were a little bit stronger, the universe would have collapsed back in on itself moments after the Big Bang. If it were a little weaker, stars and galaxies would never have formed in the first place. The cosmological constant, which drives the expansion of space, is, by some estimates, fine-tuned to a precision of 1 part in 10 to the power of 120. That's a number so huge it makes the number of atoms in the universe look small. So, why is our universe so perfect? Science gives us 3 main options: necessity, chance, or design. Necessity would mean the constants had to be these values for some reason we don't understand yet. Chance suggests we just won an unimaginable cosmic lottery. This idea often comes with the multiverse theory, that there are countless universes, and we just happen to live in the one where the settings were right. But the third option, intelligent design, suggests that the fine-tuning is a sign of a purposeful creator. Science can't prove or disprove it, leaving us to stare at the stars and wonder if all this is a cosmic accident or an act of intention. The Bible tells us, "The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament proclaims his handiwork." Psalm 19:1. For thus says the Lord, who created the heavens. He is God, who formed the earth, who made it and set it right. He did not create it in vain, but created it to be inhabited. Isaiah 45:18. Let's move on to mystery number 4. Section 4. Quantum entanglement and non-locality. Next, we're taking a detour into the weird, almost magical world of quantum physics. This is where we find a phenomenon that Albert Einstein called spooky action at a distance. Quantum entanglement. This is what happens when 2 particles become linked so that their fates are tied together, no matter how far apart they get. If you measure a property of one particle, you instantly know the same property of its partner, even if it's on the other side of the galaxy. This seems to break the ultimate cosmic speed limit, the speed of light, because the information travels instantly. This non-locality bothered Einstein so much that he thought quantum theory must be missing something. But experiment after experiment has proven it's a real feature of our universe. The 2 linked particles stop acting like individuals and behave as a single, unified entity. Now, you can't use this to send faster-than-light emails, but it does completely upend our common-sense ideas about space and separation. It points to a deeply interconnected reality, where, at a fundamental level, things aren't as separate as they seem. Some interpretations of quantum mechanics, like Bohmian mechanics, even suggest a universe where particles are all interconnected, meaning the state of one can influence all others. This scientific principle sounds a lot like ancient spiritual concepts of oneness and cosmic unity, suggesting the feeling of separation we have every day might just be an illusion. The Bible already spoke of a creation sustained in unity. And he is before all things, and in him all things consist. Colossians 1:17. In him we live and move and have our being. Acts 17:28. Alright, we're getting into some seriously mind-bending territory here. If you find these mysteries as fascinating as we do, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next trip into the unknown. Section 5. Miracles and supernatural phenomena. Coming in at number 5 is a riddle that goes head-to-head with the limits of science. Miracles. These are events that appear to just break the known laws of nature, people recovering from incurable diseases, impossible feats of survival, events that defy all odds. Science, by its very design, looks for repeatable, natural causes. A miracle, by definition, is a one-off event that's often attributed to a supernatural cause. For example, if someone has a spontaneous remission from a terminal illness, science can look for explanations like an initial misdiagnosis or the powerful, though still mysterious, placebo effect. The Catholic Church even has a miracle commission of doctors who use modern science to try and find any possible natural explanation for a healing before it can be considered miraculous. But what about the cases that stump even them? The philosopher David Hume famously argued against miracles, basically saying that universal laws, by definition, can't be broken. But that's a bit of a circular argument. It defines miracles as impossible and then concludes they can't happen. Science is amazing at explaining how things normally work, but it's just not built to investigate a claim that something supernatural intervened. These events remain in the realm of personal faith and historical accounts, a constant challenge to the idea that the material world is all there is. The Bible tells us, Jesus Christ is the same yesterday and today and forever. Hebrews 13:8. Then Jesus said to him, "If you can believe, all things are possible to him who believes." Mark 9:23. Example of a miracle. The raising of Lazarus, John 11, is a miracle beyond scientific explanation. Let's move on to mystery number 6. Section 6. The soul and the afterlife. Riddle number 6 is the ultimate human question. What happens after we die? At the heart of almost every spiritual tradition is the idea of a soul, some kind of essential self that exists apart from the body, and an afterlife. Science, on the other hand, can only study the physical. When the brain stops working, life as far as we can measure it is over. But that tidy conclusion gets complicated by things like near-death experiences or NDEs. Millions of people who were clinically dead and then brought back report strangely similar stories, leaving their body, moving through a tunnel toward a bright light, and feeling an overwhelming sense of peace. Neuroscientists have a few hypotheses, suggesting these are caused by the brain in crisis, like a lack of oxygen or a flood of neurochemicals. Some studies even show that psychedelics like DMT can trigger experiences that sound incredibly similar. What science has a harder time explaining, though, are the cases where patients report seeing things from an out-of-body perspective that they couldn't possibly have known, like accurately describing the medical procedures used to save them. While science can explain the mechanics of a dying brain, it can't access the subjective experience itself. The question of whether our consciousness can survive without the body remains beyond the reach of our instruments, making the soul and the afterlife an enduring spiritual mystery. In this sense, the Bible tells us, "And the dust returns to the earth as it was, and the spirit returns to God who gave it." Ecclesiastes 12:7. Just as it is appointed for men to die once, and after this comes judgment. Hebrews 9:27. Jesus himself promised, "I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, even if they die, will live." John 11:25. Now let's move on to the final mystery for science. Section 7. The existence of God. And that brings us to our final riddle, the biggest and most challenging of them all, the existence of God. This is a question that science is just not equipped to answer. The scientific method is all about making hypotheses you can test, observe, and, most importantly, falsify. A scientific idea has to be provably wrong. But God, as most religions and philosophies see it, is a transcendent, non-physical being that exists outside of nature and its laws. By that very definition, you can't put God in a test tube or see him with a telescope. There's no experiment you can run to prove or disprove a creator who exists outside the system you're testing. The question of God isn't a scientific one, it's a philosophical one. Plenty of brilliant scientists throughout history have been people of faith, and they saw no contradiction between their work and their beliefs. They often argue that science explains the how of the universe, while faith explores the why. Science can reveal the beautiful laws that govern everything from the dance of galaxies to the code of DNA, but it can't tell us why those laws exist or what purpose, if any, they serve. The existence of God remains the ultimate mystery, a question not of evidence but of faith, forever just beyond the reach of the scientific method. In response to this question, the Bible tells us, "The fool says in his heart, there is no God." Psalm 14:1. Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Hebrews 11:1. For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuse. Romans 1:20. Reflection. From the private universe inside our minds to the vast expanse of the cosmos, these 7 riddles show the real limits of what we currently understand. They prove that science, for all its incredible power, might not be the only tool we need to make sense of reality. These mysteries aren't a failure of science. Far from it. They're an invitation to stay curious, to keep asking questions, and to wonder if the world we can measure is just a tiny piece of the whole story. They remind us that the greatest journey of discovery isn't always about finding the answers, but about learning to live with the profound and beautiful mystery of it all. The Bible tells us in Romans 11:33, "Oh, the depth of the riches both of the wisdom and knowledge of God! How unsearchable are his judgments and his ways past finding out." Which of these riddles makes you think the most? Do you think any are missing? Tell us in the comments. Like it. And for more journeys to the limits of knowledge, don't forget to subscribe. May God bless you always.